When Michelle was in college, she was asked to give a speech at an important event.
This was to be a big deal, to have a student deliver the keynote. And so I was a bit concerned about, well, what would I talk about? What experiences would you like me to share? I'm kind of new to this. And she said, well, you know, tell them a little bit about your background. You're growing up in a broken family in the inner city, and the struggle you had to overcome, and, you know, academically what it took for you to achieve, and the hardship. And this is the kind of story that she was looking for. And obviously, this was not my story.
This does not mean we're not proud of our cultural heritage or don't want to explore it.
I'm not trying to avoid race, I'm a black male. So I'm not trying to say it's not important, because there's a lot of history and culture that's very important, at least for me and my family. But that's not the primary thing of who George June is who am I? Am I an honest person? Do I treat people well?
I do have cousins my age who would argue that point with me, who would say, Val, get down off your horse. You've been over there with all them good people, and that, you know, life's not that grand, and this is, come look at where we live. Well, I can look at where you live, but do something about it. I mean, don't wait on somebody else to help you. You can make a difference, and you can make a change on your own.
There are downsides to all this idealism and conviction, of course. Primarily reality. For all our worldly experiences, we can be really naive.
A lady came into our office one day and needed some money to get her kid out of, because the car was broke down, and I forget the whole sad story. I gave her 85 bucks. Total stranger, 85 bucks. She said, thank you very much, I'll bring it back tomorrow. Never saw the woman again. Now, trusting, is that stupid or is that trusting? I think that's stupid.
We can also come across as arrogant, self-righteous, and stubborn as mules, despite our insecurities.
There is right and wrong, and I don't understand when people don't do the right thing. I've been accused of having an overdeveloped sense of right and wrong, and being a moral zealot, somebody called me once.
A lot of this is the result of feeling so out of control when we're kids. So when we grow up, we either resign ourselves to fate or try to control everything around us, often at the same time.
In my personal relationships with men, well, I get accused of always trying to lead when we go out dancing together.
I think my being a perfectionist does try to keep me from being criticized for what I do. I did not have that critical of a mother and father. They weren't too critical of me and what I did. At least, well, let me back up. That's not true, now that I think about it. I would have to say my father was very critical of my work product. It was funny because whenever I would do something, like say if it was an art project or something like that, he would always praise me and say, wow, you know, that was a good job. But if it were me, I would have done it this way.
There is a duality within me that wars. There's that one that wants to please, yes, yes, whatever you say. And the other part that rears back and says, no way, not in this life.
I am very resentful of people in authority. I harden to them. I think of ways that I can get around their authority. I think of ways that I can undermine it. You know, my mind races. I mean, it's probably one of the most visceral feelings that I experience.
All of these attempts to control others, to control ourselves, can turn people away, which feeds right into our biggest fear of all, loss and abandonment. But instead of letting go and relaxing, we often become even more controlling, sometimes to the point of paranoia.
Trust is a really big issue in my life. I don't issue it out to people very easily, and when I do, I think there's always this thing in the back of my head that tells me they're gonna break it.
There's a distance I have, even with my closest friends. They can come this close, but only so close.
On the other hand, they're capable of injudicious trust, you know, telling a complete stranger everything about them.
I don't believe that trusting and telling people stuff are necessarily the same thing. I don't mind telling you anything about my life. Do I trust you? No. Trust is actually relying on somebody else to allow you to be vulnerable. I don't do that. hardly at all.
I've had 2 disastrous marriages, not because maybe that, but I've not ever learned commitment. I've not learned the skills that it takes to keep a relationship going.
If someone does something that hurts me or breaks my trust or stabs me in the back, and I decide it's time to leave, absolutely I can leave and never look back, and I won't even blink.
I think one of the hard things about being a military brat is that in learning these chameleon skills, learning how to be whatever you need to be for whoever you're having to present yourself to at any given time, you're never allowed to be yourself. It translates as well into relationships. You know, and I think it's tied into the whole concept of intimacy. You can't truly be intimate until you can truly be yourself, in you know, warts and all.
We're like little warriors with an Achilles heel. And that Achilles heel is a vulnerability you could describe as emotional. We're so used to burying our emotions that when something triggers them, we often overreact.
I've always been a crier. I had to figure out what the triggers were for it so I wouldn't like undermine my own career by crying inappropriately. I especially cry when I'm angry.
People who consistently aren't allowed to acknowledge any feeling other than happy, bubbly, cute, and positive. It reminds me of the movie in Ghostbusters where they have this pink stream of ooze under the street, and it feeds off of angry emotions until eventually it just erupts and it causes all this tremendous damage. That's exactly what happens when people aren't allowed to acknowledge their emotions. Sooner or later, it will erupt. Now, it can erupt in one of 2 ways. It can make people hideously angry, so angry that their anger terrifies them. So then that anger, once acknowledged, has to get stomped down again. And when you have that kind of anger, it breeds fear. Then you're afraid. And so the more grief is repressed, the more dreams are repressed, the more thoughts, ideas, feelings are repressed, the more built up anger there is. But instead of turning that anger outward and trying to use it, I mean, anger is really a great motivator in lots of situations. That anger gets turned inward. And the result of anger turned inward is deep and chronic depression.
I don't know if the reason if I'm emotional is because of the lack of relationship I had with my dad. It may be because I can't really remember too many times where my dad would tell me, "Hey son, I'm really proud of you. Hey son, you know, great job." I can't remember hugging him that much.
Most brats don't connect any of this to being raised in the military. We just think it's who we are. But who we are still covers a lot of territory.
Often in these families, we see one child who turns out very, very well, who's almost a super achiever, while other children in the family may have drug or alcohol problems, or some other kind of behavior that is not productive.
That may be because parents react differently to different children, which directly affects our behavior. Or because some of us move more than our siblings, or at more critical times. Fortunately, the life that causes these problems is the same life that gives us the skills and courage to solve them.
I spent some time with a counselor once, and after 3 or 4 sessions, he looked at me and just said, "Do you ever quit?" I'm like, of course not, And it dawned on me that other people quit. They go, "I quit," but I don't. I claw. I hold on. I hold things till, and in that persistence, I usually manage to succeed.
I think that there's an upside and a downside to almost everything that military brats get from their childhoods. Military brats are resilient. That's a very positive thing. They can adapt well, they can start over well. Military brats are often willing to take risks that others are not. It's just a matter of finding the right goal, making the right connections, acquiring a mentor or 2, and then sticking with it.
The first step is making the connection between our present and our past. But until recently, the logistics of that was pretty near impossible. I mean, how do you keep up with people when you're moving every 2 years?
I had actually been thinking about that and how sometimes I feel different from other people, or I think I'm different because I grew up this way. And does anyone in the world out there relate to me? And all of a sudden, there it was on somebody's license plate, militarybrats.com, and immediately I was like, I can't believe it. Wow, look at that. militarybrats.com. I got so excited.
It's like being in a foreign country and stumbling upon a fellow countryman, and there's just a connection that you make that crosses culture and race and age.
Welcome, gentlemen, to the Heidelberg High School Reunion of the Century, celebrating 50 years of Heidelberg High School.
Look at that old photograph. Is it really you? Smiling like a baby full of dreams. Smiling ain't so easy now. Some are coming true. Nothing simple as it seems. But I guess it kind of...
You know, there's a party and there's a dinner and everybody goes and does the typical reunion thing. But then there are little sessions where everybody just goes into their rooms and they dig out the old yearbooks, and you spend, well, saying hours is an understatement. People probably didn't sleep the whole weekend.
This old road.
After I had a chance to talk to my friends, it gave me a real sense of belonging again.
I felt such relief. Finally, I can be myself for the first time in, what, 30-some years or something like that?
Because for a long time, you're thrown out there and you're torn away from it. Once your dad retires, it's gone, and you realize, well, it's not gone. There's people that have gone through these things too, and now they're out there for me to talk to, and it's a good feeling.
Look at that old photograph. Is it really you?
Reunions aren't the only Brats-related phenomena that's exploding because of the internet. Over 70,000 have registered on the Military Brats website. 250 alumni groups have formed in 50 countries. A museum for Brats is being built in Wichita.
Home for the military brat is not a place, a point on the globe. Home for us has to be a state of mind, and I believe that one of the most important ways for us to achieve that is through understanding our military brat identity and connecting with others like ourselves. If the classroom teacher understands that central fact and develops it, helps kids to talk about their cultural identity and write about it and share those things, then the teacher is helping the child develop a strong sense of self.
The way parents can do it is to talk about it. Recall previous friends and assignments. Stop pretending we're like our cousins in Peoria. We're not. That's okay.
I think it would be a wonderful idea for the military to help young people self-reflect on their experiences while they're going through them. And when they're adults, they will have those skills to know this is what happened to me and this is why it's happening. So it's not me that I'm a dysfunctional person. I'm not, I'm not crazy.
I would have benefited so much by someone sitting down and telling me, yeah, you're going to lose some friends when you travel. Yeah, you're going to feel awkward when you go to a new school. But you know what? You can get through it. Here's some strategies.